Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today we're looking at the cooperative/party game Word Traveler. These are my thoughts. If you'd like to see an overview of the game, click on the link here or down below. So, Word Traveler. What do I think? Well, let's start with the theme and components, as I like to often do. I love this theme. I think it's a pretty simple game. So you could even see a world where you didn't need to really lay on too much theme. But the theme that's there, I really do enjoy. I love to travel. I love to think about places that I've been or dream about places that I haven't been. And this game fills that niche wonderfully. There's a lot of little, just kind of cute little details, like there's a lot of pigeons around because they're so ubiquitous in the world. Kind of neat. I love the fact that you get 4 different boards, each of them tuned to a specific city: Tokyo, New York, Paris, and London, which is very, very cool. And you know, component-wise, kind of bleeding into the components a little bit, you know, I always love when you get something like this that is unnecessary in the box. You know, like you get this little guide. You don't need that. It's just extra helpful. You could read it and learn about something. Even me traveling to a lot of these locations and things, was able to learn about a couple things. I was like, oh, I didn't know what that was. So, you know, like, this is like kind of one of those things, like you occasionally find like a historical game where they'll give you a lot of information about, you know, the conflict or whatever. And I really, really love that. It's just a little extra thing. The artwork is very nice and it's useful. It's very useful in the game because sometimes you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I can see like that it's smelly or there's, you know, it just helps you to figure out how things are. And, you know, the art, like I said, it's nice. It's cartoonish a little bit, which I think fits the weight of the game. These the pawns are all screen printed, which is really amazing. Like it's an extra bit that you don't really need. All the other components are fine. There's a lot of cards, and the fact that there's 4 different maps, 4 boards, and you know, so many locations on each of the boards, these cards become exponentially like greater and greater and greater because, you know, a lot of times a game like a trivia game or something, you might go like, oh, well, we're going to go through those cards very quickly and very easily. But in this particular game, you know, there's a huge stack of cards, and you know, on top of that, you know, you get times 4 maps, times 4 different, you know, times all the different locations of the map. So my point is a lot of variety here, which I think is really kind of cool. And lastly, this little player aid, I mean, it's so wonderful. Well, this little passport, I should say, it's very thematic. To traveling, they're really well made, and it's functional. You know, it helps you to hide your card so other players can't see it, which I think is really, really cool. And the game itself is not very expensive, so I feel like you're getting a really great little production, a lot of variety, a lot of replayability here for not a lot of money. Now, when it comes to party games, which I think this does fill in quite a bit, although you can play it as a gamer's game, I should say. But I usually, in those types of games, I like them to be quick, I like them to be easy to learn, but I like them to be like fun and strategic. And I think this game ticks all of those boxes quite well. One of the things about like party games is often they're just, you know, they're word games. Almost always, there's some ridiculous quantity of party games that are just based on like vocabulary or meanings and things. And this definitely has that to some extent, but there's a whole extra layer of the spatial element to move around the board and the strategy of like, hey, where should I go? Should I try to go, like get a bunch of 1-pointers that are close together? Should I go for that 2-pointer? You know, but then you look at your hand, you know, and you're like, well, I don't really have cards that suit those things. So it is like and you're kind of under the gun. So, you know, but I don't think it's the kind of game where you're under the gun so badly that you're going to just, you know, like you're going to melt down, because a lot of times, you know, these timed games can really turn people off. But I felt like you had plenty of time to, you know, make your decisions and to find your locations on the map. Now, speaking of the spatial element of the game, really, really fascinating. Like, and you know, you don't have the strategy is there. You don't have a ton of time, you know, to make an elaborate strategy, but you can make some moves, which I find very interesting. One is like, hey, should I go for the 2-pointers, or should I try to go where there's a cluster, or what kind of cards do I have? So there's kind of like that. But I love the idea that you can stop on a space, intentionally try to get people to stop on a space, even if you're not going to score any points, just to get to another space where maybe you can score points. So I think that's really kind of a cool way to do it. Also, the majorly interesting thing, I think, though, is the fact that you if you miss, like if they get the wrong, first stop or second stop, you're never going to get the other stops because, they're all going to be off. They're going to be moving around completely incorrectly. And so maybe you should go for like the easy, like definitely going to get them to pick these couple of things early so that you don't miss the later points. And so there's a little bit of juggling there. And I think game design wise, there's a very like kind of a hidden little interesting thing. And I love like game design and thinking about how boards and things are set up. But the board is set up so that, there's 3 locations coming off the starting space. And that's such a brilliant thing because you really only have 3 choices. No matter what direction you go to first, you're only going to have 1 of 3 choices. So it kind of lends itself to make sure that you don't like mess up your first choice and completely, get screwed on the next couple. So I think that's just like a very elegant little solution to that problem to kind of help players along, which I think is really kind of cool and innovative little thing to do. Now, this game definitely falls into that category, I think, which is like cold swish, or you might kind of do poor. I mean, you're always going to get some points, right? Which is like satisfying, but it definitely seems like sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I got the right cards and I got the right locations, and boom, I'm going to like nail this thing. And you're going to do all your planning within like 45 seconds, and you're going to be done, and you're just going to be waiting. And sometimes you're like, oh my god, like I'm getting like completely, I don't have the right cards, and I don't know what to do, and I'm going to change my mind. And so, it's I think it definitely fills in that party game area of like, well, maybe it might be a little swingy or whatever. I mean, it's definitely strategic and you feel like the choices you're making matter, which I like. But, sometimes I feel like you can have a really easier game or a more difficult game. Not too much, but I think it's there. So there you have it. You've got a wonderful theme, a really fabulous production, you've got a ton of replayability, and you've got a game that you can bring out cooperatively to play with, gamers and non-gamers alike. That's not too long and not very difficult to teach. A party game with a little meat on the bone? Sign me up. Well, for now, I gotta roll.